Undertone is being marketed as the scariest movie of the year. And one thing I'll say is, it's definitely a unique experience. Thank you for joining me for my Undertone spoiler review, and if you like discussing movies and TV or ranking things from worst to best, I really hope that you subscribe to the channel and like this video. It really helps the channel grow. I also hope that you follow Popcorn Heist on Instagram, where we have reels and trivia on Tuesday and polls on Saturday. I've been hearing about undertones for the past few weeks, and I'm always excited to see a horror movie, especially one that sounds like it has an inventive or unique concept. So although I didn't know too much about it, I was excited to go into this movie, and now I'm excited to talk about it. I will be discussing spoilers, so this is your spoiler warning for Undertone. At Popcorn Heist, I choose a quote per video, and the quote of today's video is, "Don't be afraid of the dark, be afraid of the silence," which is said by Justin, the co-host of the podcast in the Undertone movie. I think this quote speaks to the goal of the movie as a whole, because it tries to really make you feel unsettled and uncomfortable, and I think it uses sound and corresponding silence to really achieve that goal. Undertones basically focuses on our main character Evie and takes place all in one house, where she's taking care of her sick and bedridden mother. At night, she also hosts a paranormal podcast with her co-host and friend Justin, and they receive an ominous email with 10 audio recordings. They basically listen to all 10 of these recordings for the first time as they're recording the podcast. I think where this movie really succeeds is creating an unsettling environment and keeping you on the edge of your seat using visuals and audio. It uses a lot of still shots and a lot of slow pans and slow zooms and a lot of odd angling, and it also has inventive use of mirrors and reflections as it's moving throughout the house. And all of this creates a really unsettling and eerie vibe. And because it takes place in one setting and you really only focus on Evie throughout the movie, you hear a lot of other characters, but you really only see Evie and her unconscious mother. It makes you feel cooped up and isolated, so much so that every little detail in the background really stands out to you and creates a moment in the movie. The audio in this movie is really the main standout, especially when paired with the slower visuals and black screens between scenes. I really loved the podcast scenes and the way the movie had Justin and Evie listening to this kind of found audio footage for the first time. It made it feel like you were really interacting with them and made you want to decipher with the characters and learn details as the characters learn them. And I think the podcast as a whole was a cool gimmick, especially when paired with the isolated house feel. It kind of made you unsure what was going on the audio recording versus what was going on in the house with Evie. I almost thought that once they started recording the podcast, that the entire movie was basically going to be one podcast recording from that point forward. Obviously, it didn't go that route, but I think that would have been cool. I will say Evie needs to step up her podcast game, because I think Justin carried that podcast. When the visuals, the audio, the isolated house setting, and the podcast/found footage format all came together, I think it really did create some scenes that kept you on the edge of your seat because you were so focused on the minimal details that were going on. I think it created a unique and inventive experience that made you really feel scared and unsettled. This movie is really focused on keeping you on the edge of your seat and not getting you quite over that edge, that it becomes very slow and a little bit of a slow burn as the movie progresses. And I think that can really work for horror if you bring everything together well and deliver on the slow burn throughout the entire movie. But I really don't think the movie came together all that well. I think the main climax, when Evie and Justin are listening to the final recording, I think it tries to throw everything at you at once. And you know crazy things are happening, but you don't really understand exactly what they are, because it doesn't really connect everything from earlier in the movie that well. It doesn't explain the inconsistencies with the clock or the audio that's going on the recording and in Evie's house at the same time. It doesn't really explain the drawings and why Evie drew them. It's flashing between different scenes and different audio, but doesn't really do a great job explaining how everything connects. I feel like I need to watch like a frame-by-frame analysis of this final sequence to really understand exactly what's going on. And I feel like after watching such a slow burn, I should be rewarded with some sort of payoff. I don't need all the answers, but I should still understand all the different details and how they connect in the end. And it cuts to black and doesn't even explain what happens between Evie and her mother and who is possessed and who kills who. Again, if I had a frame-by-frame analysis, I might be able to get those answers, but On my first watch, it did not stand out to me exactly what happened. And I think open endings can work for movies, especially horror movies, but in this case, it felt like a cop-out, and it didn't feel like they really knew how to deliver on all of the different aspects that they include throughout the movie. There's a lot of themes in this movie and minimal details that I really didn't feel were fully fleshed out or explained or incorporated into the plot. There's some religious undertones and connections to the Virgin Mother Mary that I didn't feel like were fully explained or paid off. I guess they try to connect it when Evie is explaining that she feels like she killed her mother because she didn't pray for her, but I'm not sure that fully landed when they attempted to connect everything in the end. There was also a lot of dream sequences in the movie and moments where you're not really sure exactly what's real, and I feel like those are the big scare sequences, and I always hate moments like that in movies unless they're really explained and you're really told if they're truly influenced by something outside, which I don't feel like this movie really fully explained. There's also this aspect to the demon where it's jealous of motherhood and wants to take control of mothers and take their children. And I was a little bit unsure exactly how that played into the dynamic because Evie is expecting a child and she's also taking care of her mother. So I was a little bit confused on who the demon wanted to influence and who the demon was trying to take for themselves. And I don't feel like that was fully explained when the movie came to its ending. In the end, I would give this movie a 2.5 out of 5 popcorn buckets. I think it was a really unique experience and it definitely keeps you on the edge of your seat and was pretty scary at certain points, but it doesn't deliver on all the different plot points and details and different themes that it includes throughout the movie, and definitely does not deliver a satisfying and conclusive ending. I think there's a lot of unique and inventive things in this movie, and there's definitely things to love in there for horror buffs, but in my opinion, it just didn't deliver on the slow burn. Thank you for joining me for this review, and if you enjoyed this video, I really hope that you subscribe to the channel and like this video, and join me for more reviews and more horror and movie and TV content.